Hello, Laziali all over the world. Welcome to another episode of Lazio Lounge. I'm Vittorio Campanile. We have plenty of things to talk about. We have Lazio Napoli. We have to talk about deadline day because deadline day passed. And we didn't talk about Sampdoria Lazio match. Unfortunately, Lazio played during the week. And Mr. Alistair McKenzie, who's joining me. There is Lazio Feyenoord this week. Europa League starting quite early this season. So we have a lot of things to talk about. Let's start from Lazio Napoli. Saturday night match. Again, it looks like, Alistair, there is a sort of curse for Lazio to beat Napoli. Last time we beat Napoli away was 2014, Onazzi scoring the decisive goal for 2 with Stefano Pioli on the bench. But even at home, things are not going very well. I think last time Lazio beat Napoli at home, Rino Gattuso was the manager of Napoli, right? So it's a curse. I mean, terrible performance, probably the worst performance of the season for Lazio against Napoli. Do you agree?
Yeah, probably. I think that it's the most outclassed Lazio have been so far this season. And to be honest, by the end of the game, it could have been worse. I think 2-1 flattered Lazio. I think even Provedel put in the kind of game that's going to make it even harder for Maximiano to ever get that number 1 shirt off him. That said, there were a lot of moments of controversy in this match that I'm sure we'll get onto. And in terms of the level of performance, yeah, I think it was the worst of the season. But at the same time, I thought actually the first half hour, Lazio were relatively comfortable. And the last half hour, once the changes were made in midfield in particular, they did get back into the game. But it was that middle half hour where they were completely blown off the park. The final 15 of the first half and the opening 15 of the second half, they were completely outclassed by Napoli. And like I say, it could have been worse. So a lot of talking points. Thankfully, I've got a coffee with me today because we've got a lot to go through.
Talking about coffee, thanks, Alistair, for the present. I really appreciate that.
Well, happy birthday, Vittorio, from everyone at Lazio Lounge.
So just me and you. Anyway, I was surprised to see Luis Alberto starting, Alistair. Shall we start from there? He started against Sampdoria, and he didn't impress even against Sampdoria. So I didn't expect him to start against Napoli. And I think one of the reasons why Lazio struggled massively, especially in the first half, was because Luis Alberto didn't touch the ball and Lazio was always struggling in midfield because Luis Alberto was always didn't provide assists, didn't defend, and Lazio was one man down pretty much in midfield with Luis Alberto starting.
Yeah, it was a surprise. Obviously, he made a big impact off the bench against Inter. And I don't think it was a big surprise to see him then get put in the team against Samp because we knew what to expect from Samp in a certain way. We felt like it was a game we could control and a game that the creativity of Alberto, the kind of compromise you're making there by adding creativity and getting rid of physicality. That's a compromise I think you're happy to make against a team like Samp. But I was really surprised that it was a compromise Sarri felt he was able to make against Napoli because they have so much quality in midfield and not only to counter Napoli's threat, but also to replicate really the blueprint of the success the Lazio had against Inter. Those were the reasons I was surprised that Alberto started. That said, it did get off to an incredible start. Zaccagni's goal was fantastically well taken. And like I mentioned right at the start, I did honestly think for that first 25, 30 minutes after the goal, Lazio looked fine. Obviously, they weren't in possession a lot, but they aren't that often this season. They were looking fairly comfortable in terms of soaking up Napoli's attacks. Napoli didn't get a shot on target until that chance where Kvaratskhelia took the ball off Sergei and had quite a tame shot saved. So I thought Lazio actually looked all right for the first half hour, so I wouldn't want to be too critical. But it was more that once the momentum changed, perhaps Sarri took a bit too long to do something about it because it was quite a while. I can't remember the exact minute that the changes were made, but Napoli they start. Maybe he hoped that a halftime team talk would change things, but the first 5 minutes of that second half was just a blizzard of Napoli chances, and it was pretty amazing. Lazio didn't concede in that time. 3 or 4 saves from Provedel. Osimhen hit the post, and the changes were needed at some point.
I would say that Saturday's match confirmed that our defense has improved a lot. You mentioned Provedel, but we have to talk even about Romagnoli and Patrick, because our defense, I mean, last year probably we would have conceded 4 or 5 goals after a match like that. Instead, losing just to 1, keep it close, that was a hell of a job from our defense, because, as I mentioned before, our midfield didn't support our defense. Milinkovic Savic, you mentioned, lost a dreadful ball. Luis Alberto was never close, and Cataldi was pretty much trying to close gaps everywhere. So I thought Romagnoli and Patrick had a terrific performance. Provedel again, great performance. So there have been some improvement, especially in our defense. As you mentioned, we didn't keep the ball that much. And I thought in the first half, we was trying to bypass our midfield and play long ball to find Ciro Immobile or Felipe Anderson there. So that's why I didn't understand why Luis Alberto started, because that's not his type of football. He wants the ball on his feet and move the ball. So that was why I was really concerned. But seeing the positive side, our defense was impressive. And I don't know, if you see, they're pretty much the same players of last year, just Romagnoli added. That only the adding of Romagnoli makes all that difference?
It's certainly added a lot of kind of reliability. I mean, I feel like everyone trusts him, and he's quickly adopted a position of leadership in that defense and in that team, which is kind of surprising given that he's the only new face in that back four. But yeah, you're right. I mean, I think we did ride our luck. It wasn't just the defense that kept this down to 2. But at the same time, if it has been kept to 2, that's it's better than 4. Just asked Jose Mourinho. But you have to say as well, I was surprised. I mentioned this briefly to you yesterday. I was surprised that Sarri didn't try and kind of replicate more what Fiorentina did to Napoli last weekend, because Fiorentina were really aggressive in that game, finished 0-0, but it was a very even match. Fiorentina were aggressive in their pressing, putting a lot of pressure on Napoli, and Lazio, on the other hand, kind of started fast, but then it was more they were pegged back, but they seemed willing to kind of soak up pressure as well in that kind of first half hour or so. And I don't know, it's easy with hindsight to criticize, but I feel like it required a slightly bolder approach, and maybe it is what you're talking about, that history with Napoli. Maybe with this group of players, maybe they just don't believe they can win against Napoli now. It's been so long, and it's been, the same players from that team have been a big part of all these matches. Ciro, Sergei, Alberto, Lazzari, Maricic, they're so used to losing to Napoli that perhaps they've got a bit of a mental block there. I don't know.
Yeah, as you mentioned, Fiorentina played very well against Napoli. For me, they deserve to win, but they missed the number 9. We were talking about Jovic yesterday. I was surprised that Lazio didn't pressure that high like Sarri usually wants to. So that's something I didn't understand. Do you think that the fact that Sarri started the same team that played against Sampdoria, against Napoli, had affected the performance? I mean, Napoli did a massive turnover against Lecce. And I thought Napoli was running much faster than Lazio. I think playing every 3 days, you have to rotate much more than what Lazio did against Napoli.
Yeah, I mean, that was certainly, I think, evident that there was a kind of different pace between the two teams. I think it has surprised me the lack of rotation. I guess Lazio have had fairly strong start to the season, and Sarri's not been wanting to change things too much, but he's going to have to sooner or later. I thought that Ciro was really disappointing against Napoli, for example. How much of that was his fault, I'm not sure. He was extremely isolated, as he was against Torino as well. But yeah, I feel like the changes Sarri has made so far this season have generally been pretty good and made quite a good impact on games. I think with Cancellieri, Vecino, these guys have made a decent impact off
Pedro.
the bench. I've surprised Pedro, yeah, surprised they've not been trusted more to have starts. And now obviously Europa League's about to start. It's going to have to. There's going to have to be a lot of rotation sooner or later, or else these players are going to burn out. So I don't know. I mean, the other big talking point from this game, though, is something I know is close to your heart, which is Italian refereeing.
Do you want to talk about the referee, or shall we continue on the turnover and ask you if against Feyenoord you expect a massive rotation? Because that's a key match for the Europa League, right? If you win against Feyenoord, well, that's a big start for the Europa League competition. So do you rotate massively, or do you stick with the starting 11 and maybe bench Luis Alberto and play Basic or Vecino?
It's going to be really interesting to see, because I think it's the first really obvious opportunity for Sarri to rotate, because I think Samp, although it was a midweek game, just coming off that Inter result, you can understand why he didn't want to change a winning formula too much. And we're going to get a much better idea here of how he sees the Europa League going. I would expect things like, I expect Maximiano will get his chance here. Probably Pedro, almost certainly Basic or Vecino or both, maybe Marcos Antonio. So yeah, I feel like he'll probably make a good kind of 4 or 5 changes, but I'm not expecting an entire, 11 out there.
Well, honestly, I would expect, and I would have done rotation even against Sampdoria, because playing 3 days after Inter against a team that has been dreadful so far, I would have started Basic, I would have started Marcos Antonio, etc. So just to put it out there, I don't agree with the decision of Maurizio Sarri. But you mentioned the referee. Before talking about the Lazzari penalty that was embarrassing, there is this stats that is simply unbelievable, Alistair. In the last 4 matches of Lazio, the opponent team had just 1 yellow card. Against Torino-Lazio, Torino made 11 fouls, 0 yellow card. Lazio made 12, and we had 5 yellow cards. Lazio-Inter, Lazio made 5 fouls, 2 yellow cards. Inter, 12, 1 yellow card. The only one so far. Sampdoria-Lazio, last Wednesday, some foul 11, yellow card 0. Fouls Lazio 10, yellow cards 2. Against Napoli, fouls Lazio 12, yellow cards 4. Fouls Napoli 14, yellow card 0. Lazio had 13 yellow cards in the last 4 matches with 38 fouls. The opponent of Lazio, 48 fouls, just 1 yellow card. 1 yellow card every 48 fouls, while Lazio more than 1 every 3 fouls. What do you make of it?
It's crazy. Yeah, I mean, obviously you would have to understand really how fair or not that is. You would probably need to go through all these fouls on a case-by-case basis and see what is and isn't a yellow. But it is crazy, the discrepancy between how Lazio are being treated, how severely they're being treated by referees compared to the opposition. I mean, one card for every 3 fouls. That's something else. We've watched every game Lazio played so far this season, and I can't say that they've been a dirty team, that they've been overly aggressive. Yes, perhaps more physical, but not in that way. Even being booked for things like dissent more quickly than the opposition, like Sergei was yesterday. So, Lazio should have had a clear penalty yesterday. And in the end, Lazio earned a yellow card for it because of complaints. So, yeah, there's a lot to say about the officiating, especially from that game. And look, they are 2 separate things. I'd start by saying Napoli definitely deserved to win this match. They should have won this match more comfortably. I've said that time and again already. But that doesn't mean the 2 things can be true at the same time. It was also a penalty. And the yellow cards that you're mentioning is an issue. And obviously, Sarri had a lot to say about this as well, didn't he?
Yeah, and against Sampdoria, Lazio deserved to win. Lazio should have won that match. Some had one chance to score, and that's what happened in football, right? How many matches? I mean, Napoli deserved to lose against Fiorentina. They got out a point. So, it happens. And so, yes, Napoli played much better than Lazio. We said it. Still, that was a penalty. You go 2-0, and it's a completely different match. So, that's one thing very important. The other thing, as you were mentioning, Milinkovic Savic got a yellow card because he protested about the penalty. In the first half, Lozano did exactly the same thing. He didn't get a penalty. The other thing is Torino. I mean, if you didn't follow Torino, Torino is a team that very similar to Atalanta. They do play man-to-man full pitch. And if you dribble past your man, they foul you. So they are a team that gets a lot of yellow cards. Lazio got 5 yellow cards, Torino 0. So this tells you that there's something wrong. There's something really wrong against Lazio about the ref. We both were at the stadium Saturday, and how Sozza, the referee, was interacting with Lazio players were completely different as he was interacting with Napoli players. So there's something there. And I have to say this, Alistair, I don't like how Lazio managed the thing. Sarri went out and talked about, but after the game, don't say Lotito Tare should. There's someone missing. I don't know, a club manager, someone who went there and talked to Sky and say, guys, these are the numbers. This is simply unacceptable. I want explanation. No one spoke because Lotito is busy, Tare is somewhere else, etc. This is a problem about Lazio, because if he was on the other side of Rome, we know that Roma would have sent Thiago Pinto, someone else complaining, crying, etc. Right?
So you mean like an Angelo Peruzzi style figure or something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. And newspaper are not talking about this today. Instead, if Peruzzi would have spoke, started to say, hey, there's these unbelievable stats, I guess Corriere dello Sport would have made an article say, hey, this number doesn't work out. It's impossible. 48 fouls, just 1 yellow card, right?
Yeah. Obviously, the eventual response to this was the response that always happens, which is Lazio release a club statement.
Yeah.
Pointing out the Lazio penalty, pointing out, in their view, which Sarri also said, that Napoli's first goal should have been disallowed. I disagree with that. I don't think that's a foul any day of the week. Alberto doesn't even appeal for it. And if you're giving fouls for that at every corner, what's the point in even having corners? So I disagree with that. They've obviously taken a stance. I don't think I've heard of this guy that the quotes were from, Lazio's refereeing representative.
Yeah. So basically, just to explain, now every team has a sort of referee ambassador. He hosts the referee when he gets to the Stadio Olimpico, he brings it to the locker room, he presents the list, blah, 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 things like that. One thing, the Zone here in Italy has a former ref that talks about the episodes of the matches. And this guy that's called Marelli said, that was a mistake. The ref should have stopped the corner, go and talk to Kim and say, don't do it anymore, and retake the corner. So that's what Marelli said, and that's what Sarri should have said. Not that there was a free kick, but the corner should have been retaken, and so maybe they wouldn't score. The second thing, that was simply embarrassing. That was a penalty. It should have been even called by VAR. That's an incredible mistake by the ref. So that's just to explain the cases. I agree. I don't think that was a foul, but if you go, this year Monza has been disallowed a goal from Petagna. Exact same thing. So it's this that drives me crazy. Why for one team it's disallowed, for Lazio it's not?
Yeah. And the elbow in the face was... Oh. Yeah, it's bad when it was pretty clear in real time. And often those kind of fouls where it's, or not in many cases, where it's a case of getting in front of the opposition, often they're not fouls because you can hold out a straight arm in front of your opponent and block them off. And that's not given as a foul most of the time, it's just kind of out-strengthening them. But if you're raising it above that to kind of face height with a bent elbow like that, it was pretty clear, even from the press box in the Olimpico, which is about 3 kilometers from the pitch. It was pretty obvious. And then the replay made it even more obvious. So again, it's a question of VAR intervention. Why is that not happening? Going back to the refereeing again, there's a lot of quite new referees in the league this year. I think they're trying to kind of turn a corner with a new generation coming through, and it's slightly concerning that this is happening at the same time that there's supposed to be a bit of a refresh button being pressed with Italian refereeing.
Do you agree? Do you agree what Sarri said? Sarri said the referees talked to us and said we're going to pay for our behavior against Bologna. Just reminder, Bologna, Maximiano got sent off after 5 minutes. Lazio complained about that. Bologna was awarded a penalty soon afterwards. Again, Lazio complained about that. And then Bologna's player, I don't remember his name, has been sent off. Lazio pushing the ref to send him off, etc. Do you agree that that's the reason why ref against Lazio?
I don't know. I don't know. It's hard to really get a proper understanding of what's going on here. I still, I'm very reluctant always probably because of how quick everyone in Italy is to talk about some great injustice that's happening or some massive scandal that's brewing under the surface. I doubt it is that. I think you just need to look at these cases and independently and try and work it out. But for me, the Napoli game is far clearer as an issue than any other match that's happened so far, and I think that's why it's been the tipping point in terms of people talking about it a lot more. I don't think there's any. Like I said, I think Lazio deserved to lose this game. And then the rest of Lazio's games so far this season, I don't think there's any game that's been dictated by refereeing decisions at all.
Yes and no, because let's remember Simone Inzaghi. What would happen if a player gets a yellow card in the first half with Simone Inzaghi? He's out, right? Second half, out. Imagine a central defender marking Ciro Immobile getting a yellow card. He won't do a challenge next time. He will be very aware of that, right? Thinking, hey, I got a yellow card. I have to be careful. This changes matches. I mean, if you book...
That's what happened against Bologna, though, Sumaro.
Yeah, and that was the only case. After that, it never happened. I mean, think about that. You get a player a yellow card, you take him off. You get a central defender a yellow card. He's not going to do tackles in the last second when he's already booked, right? So, yes, I think yellow cards affect the matches more than people think about.
Yeah, and to be fair, Sumaro is like... I don't think you've ever seen 2 clearer yellows in your life, and he was lucky to even have made it that far. So it probably took something that extreme for him to get the 2 yellows in the first place.
I mean, it's this that drives me crazy. He should have been sent off 20 minutes before, and now we are paying because he has been sent off late. I mean, that's simply crazy. But again, yellow cards affected matches. Then maybe we should do an episode, Alistair, because free kicks are so important in modern football. I mean, watch Roma. How many goals do they score on free kicks and corner kicks? I don't remember last time Lazio scored on a free kick, honestly. And this is a big issue. Same thing, corner kicks. They are so important. And Lazio never take advantage of them. Never.
Yeah. I think before the Monza game on Wednesday, half of Roma's goals this season were from corners. Yeah. And part of the reason Mourinho keeps signing players who are about 6'3" or something. Like 190. Yeah, I mean, I see what you're saying. I think that's probably enough on that for now. I mean, it's something to keep track of. It will be interesting to see what happens now. Because it's always hard to tell. If you kick up a big fuss about it and create a controversy around it, does that help you, or does that make the referees even more belligerent and stubborn in the way they view you? I don't know. It can go either way. It probably depends on the referee. But
last year we saw Roma taking advantage of crying every single match. But on the other side, usually Lazio get penalized. Now there are rumors that Sarri could be disqualified for what he said after the match. So, this is the biggest issue I have.
I wouldn't be surprised.
I wouldn't be surprised, no. But if Mourinho cries like he cried for 1 year last year, Roma take advantage. If Sarri says something, everybody shout against him and he get disqualified for 1 month, which doesn't make sense. But yeah, let's move on. Let's talk about the transfer market deadline, right? Huge signing for Lazio on the deadline day.
Do you feel better now?
No, I don't. Honestly, I don't.
Yes. Yeah, deadline day. God, it feels like a long time ago already. Well, I mean, the big news was that Francesco Acerbi has eventually found a new club, Vittorio. So, I mean, I think we were texting each other in the morning of the day. You didn't sound very hopeful that was going to happen. So, what do you think? I mean, it's probably the right resolution in the end that he has found a new club, but it's a bit of a shame that it ended up this way in the first place. And Lazio haven't really profited hugely in any way from this happening.
This is my biggest concern. I mean, I'm pretty sure he's coming back in 12 months. Lazio should have been pushing for an obligation to buy the player. I mean, Acerbi is 34 now. I don't think Inter is going to sign him next year, right? And we're going to have it back in Rome, and it's going to be even more difficult to find a solution for Acerbi next year because he's getting older. Don't know how much he's going to play with Inter. Obviously, there's the positive thing that he's Inzaghi, his friend, so he's going to have opportunity. But Lazio should have pushed to add the obligation and not the right to buy. The positive sign is obviously Acerbi is gone for this year. You won't be paying a huge salary. He's not going to create issue in the locker room during training, etc. So yeah, you can see it the positive way. Lazio was able to pretty much send away every player because Acerbi, Akpa Pro, King, and so on. But I don't know, 85% of these are coming back in June next year, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Acerbi was the classic, well, the ultimate really deadline day move, wasn't he? Because for both clubs, it was almost the last resort. You know,
Yeah.
Inter were looking at so many different defenders before Acerbi in terms of their priority list. Obviously, they were also wondering whether Skriniar was staying or going this whole time as well. And I think when it came down to it, they knew Acerbi was there, they knew he was available, and it's more filling in a gap with an experienced player who Inzaghi obviously likes, and it worked for them, but it worked for them as a kind of last minute deal. And I think likewise for Lazio, it's if they knew that was what's on the table, the loan with the option at what 4 million was it? It's not perfect, but it's better than having him stay at the club. So they were probably hoping, you know, Monza or someone else was going to come in with a serious offer before deadline day, and it never materialized. So yeah, I mean, look, it is better to get these guys off the books. I think Lazio have done a better job this summer at offloading players than any summer in recent memory. If you consider that, I mean, money was brought in for Vavro, for Morici, that Akpro's gone, Dermizi's gone, Acerbi's gone. You know, there's a lot of players Lazio meant to get rid of, they've managed. And yeah, not always with a great amount of money being raised at the same time, but still, it's really positive that they're not at Lazio just taking up space.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. I think we are without players out of the squad, and this is the first time ever. I mean, in the Lotito era, for sure, ever. So that's amazing. That's really positive. And
is Fares in the squad?
Fares has been added in the squad, so that's.
Yeah.
Don't know when he's gonna play because, well, to be honest, Fares was pretty much impossible to sell. Right? He has his broken knee, so no one would have come in and signed a player who's injured and is going to be injured till January probably. So he has been added to the list. Don't know if he's going to be able to play. But I mean, the funny thing is Javan Anderson was added in the list and was called for the Samp match on Wednesday, and he has been sold on Sunday, on Thursday. So that was really incredible. We got rid even about King, who went to, I don't remember which league, and he has been sold definitely 2 million euros. So this is the first. Durmizi, we were never able to. Now there's a question mark on Durmizi because on deadline day he said he closed his contract with Lazio and signed with the Leganés. But both team made the press release saying that Lazio sent him on loan. So now we don't know what happened. But first time ever, there's no player out of the squad.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty amazing, to be honest. Fares was always going to be tough because of the reasons you outlined. He's a left-footed left back, though. When he's back, that's what Sarri wants. So yeah, I mean, just looking at because I kind of forgot where everyone's ended up going. Keane's gone to OH Leuven, I think in Belgium, if I'm not mistaken. Javan Anderson to Oxford United. I mean, it's an interesting one. Back pro to Empoli, just waiting now for Lazio Empoli and for him to have the best match he's ever put in before. So I think we just have to be willing to accept that. And Durmizi to Leganes in Spain. So bit of an eclectic mix of teams everyone's gone off to. I can't remember if we mentioned what Raul Moro or not yet to Ternana. I mean, I'm a bit skeptical about how useful that will be to him, but we'll wait and see. It's probably worth keeping an eye on.
He came in last match Ternana played, last 5-6 minutes. So I hope he gets some play time because he deserves it. Let's not forget, Alistair, that this Saturday there was go-ahead Eagles against Feyenoord, and Bobbia De Cagna made the assist for the second goal for go-ahead Eagle, who was winning 2-0 and lost 3-4. But, another one of our former players get a chance there.
Marici watch this week?
He didn't score, unfortunately. He didn't score. God. Yeah, big surprise. Going back to Acerbi, before I forget, Monza made an offer to Acerbi, and Lazio agreed with that. Simply, Acerbi didn't want to go there. So that's one of the issues we'll have with Acerbi. He wants a top team. I don't believe a top team next year is going to be available for him or interested in him.
See how he goes. I mean, I think it was pretty clear last season that his form dipped quite a lot. There's obviously the off-field stuff didn't help with any of that. It's a shame. It is a shame the way it's ended. I think honestly, he's been one of the best signings Tari has made, considering how quickly he filled that void left by De Vrij. It was something everyone was very worried about at the time, and that first season, if anything, he was an upgrade. He was superb how quickly he fitted in, and he's been, Lazio's most dependable defender that entire period since he arrived since he left, basically. So I do wish him all the best. I mean, I completely disagree with all the kind of Corbinord's beef with him in the first place. But there you go. And at least he's left, and it's not really a bitter pill to swallow for us because, like you're saying, the defense has been strengthened and it's been performing really well. So that does make it a bit easier.
Yeah, definitely. And we find one thing we didn't mention. I mean, this year we signed a lot of players, and if we take off Vecino from the conversation, they're all younger. I think the oldest player, apart from Vecino, is Casale, that is 25, 24 maybe. So, Hila is 20, Marcos Antonio is 22, Maximiano 23. I mean, we did a pretty good job of rejuvenating the team.
I guess Providel's like 28 or something, but
27, yeah.
But for a keeper, that's still basically the same thing. No, absolutely. Look, I think overall it's been a successful mercato. Certainly, strength and depth has improved. I think we've probably not seen as many of the new signings yet as we thought we would or we would have liked to see. But like you say, the fact that they're all so young and they've rejuvenated the squad is helpful in itself, because that means that that there is time. You don't have to immediately throw these guys into the team to try and revolutionize it. You can give them the opportunity to adapt. I don't think it's a coincidence that Marcos Antonio is being given, is having to wait. He's being patient with how he uses Marcos Antonio, and Cataldi's been playing pretty well in his absence as well. So I think successful. It's not been a hugely headline-grabbing mercato. I don't think. I think it's gone a bit under the radar when you look at some of the
As
papers
usual.
and how they've been, grading everyone. Lazio haven't been rated all that highly, but I think it's been solid. Pretty steady. If I was to grade it, I'd probably say 7 out of 10 or something. Solid and good. In every way, the ins and the outs, and the overall look at the squad now is better than when we started, which is all you can ask for.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this is probably the best mercato of the Lotito era, both way, selling players and signing players. So definitely positive. Now, I think the job to Sarri is to give them time, give them chance to prove. I was surprised to see Cancellieri playing that much. But on the other side, I was expecting Marcos Antonio to play much more. As you mentioned, Cataldi played really well. But again, against Napoli, we saw him struggling. And I thought this is due particularly because he played against Sampdoria, he played against Inter. He needed to rest it a little bit. So I was surprised that Sarri didn't start Marcos Antonio. And this lead me to another question. Against Napoli, he took off Cataldi and brought in Basic. Do you think Basic can play in that position? Do you think it's just something for that match, or is it a test long term?
Vecino came into that role, though, didn't he? Well, because I thought Basic came on and Vecino dropped into the Regista role, and Basic was on the left.
I thought it was Basic playing in central there.
Okay. I might be wrong about that then.
Maybe I'm
but yeah, well, I think Vecino's the more natural, obvious fit for that position. Basic is something we talked about a little bit last season, and basically came to the conclusion that it wasn't going to happen. So I think Vecino's got the kind of all-round game for it. He's physical, he's intelligent, he can read the game well, but he's also got good passing. He's not particularly flamboyant player, but he will keep the tempo ticking over, and he's a decent option. I don't think he's going to be the first choice option there, but for me, I think when it gets beyond Antonio and Cataldi, he's the person I would turn to next.
Do you think Marcos Antonio will have a chance in Europa League playing that position?
Yeah, he should, shouldn't he? I mean, I would like to see him against Feyenoord. I would actually like to see Cancellieri as well on the wing.
Not Vice Immobile.
Not against Feyenoord, no. I think if I was to pick my team, I'd probably have him and Pedro starting either side of Immobile, have Antonio in midfield with maybe Alberto and Vecino, Maximiano in goal, and I'd maybe put in one of the new centre-backs, Gila or Casale, alongside Romagnoli and give Patrick a rest. I think that's a good way of, that's still a pretty strong team without completely changing everything. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I was hoping, in my mind, the match where Lazio should have done more turnover is against Sampdoria, and then play the starters against Napoli, and then rotate a little bit against Feyenoord. Remembering that Feyenoord is not a great team. They sold the best player they had this summer. So I was expecting Maximiano to start, obviously, in Europa League, and maybe change a couple of players. I mean, Ciro Immobile, we didn't talk about that. He played every single second of these 5 matches, which is far too much. I know it's the start of the season, but you could see Ciro Immobile very tired against Napoli in the end of the match and against Sampdoria. So if possible, I would risk him. I don't know, maybe start Pedro instead of Ciro Immobile. Don't know, but definitely not start Ciro Immobile. Rotate something in midfield where finally you have options. I don't know if change every 3, all of the 3 midfielder would be the good decision, but start Marcos Antonio, maybe give another chance to Basic. And in defense, I would maybe start Casale and Maximiliano. And you have to see how Marusic is. He had a huge header on Saturday, so maybe. And you have 5 subs, right? If the first half doesn't go well, you can change.
Yeah, I was going to say that's something I feel like not just Sarri, but managers in general haven't really worked
Yeah,
that one out yet, and how to make the most of that. It's because it's changed football, really. The idea that you
definitely.
can change half of your team, half of your outfield players in the course of a match. Yet the rotation it's not as difficult as it used to be, because you can still start Chiro and you can take him off after half an hour. There's still a stigma about first half substitutes in football, which is understandable because it used to be something that would only happen in absolutely dire circumstances. But you can do that if your strategy is to start a game really fast and try and establish an early lead, press really high, and then drop back later in the game, for example. You can do that. Tell Chiro to run himself into the ground in the first 25 minutes and then take him off after half an hour. It's not. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be an insult to Chiro to do that. You get 5 subs. So I do wonder if that's something, as the season goes on, we'll see a bit more of, just in general across the leagues, because like I say, I feel like everyone at the moment is doing the same thing, which is maybe make a change at halftime and then have a couple of 2-man changes during the second half, whereas first half changes probably will become a bigger part of the game.
Don't know. First half, I would prefer to rest Shiro and see how things go. If Lazio is able to go ahead without Shiro playing in the first half, then that's even better. You can rest him for 95 minutes. But definitely, Shiro has to stop not playing on Thursday, even because then we have Verona, another match we have to win. Shouldn't be very difficult as Verona is playing, but again, Verona in the past has been very difficult for us. So you never know. It's true Simone is not there. Juric is not the manager anymore, but don't know if I would do that much turnover against Verona, right? And we know from the past, or better, from last year, that the match after Europa League has been very difficult for Lazio, even against lower team like Verona. Let's not forget last year we lost 4-1 against Verona.
Yeah, the record was shocking last year for the games, the league games directly after Europe. So it's a really interesting week ahead to see how things have changed, both the rotation and the new players, and also the kind of mentality of the team and how they respond to this stuff as well, because a couple of disappointing results now. We don't want it to really get any worse than that. But
well, it's not the moment to see the table and panic, right? I think the performance is the most important thing right now. And yeah, against Napoli was dreadful, but against Inter it was great. Even against Sampdoria, we played much better, and so on. So the performance is encouraging. I think we have to find a way to sustain and help Chiro much more than we did so far.
Well, I was going to say, just looking at the table, I mean, it's pretty encouraging, really. Just there are frustrations about the last couple of results for sure, but looking at the table now, Lazio 3 points off the top. It's so ridiculously tight there, and every team is making mistakes. There is no perfect team this year, so there will be more chances, I think, than before to make up ground if you slip up a little bit. And I think it's promising that not only the Lazio are 3 points off top after 5 games, but they're 3 points off top after 5 games, having already played Inter and Napoli, which is not bad. I think if you'd asked us at the start of the season, we would have taken that. Obviously, Atalanta can go top tonight. That changes a little bit, but I think if Lazio can hit form now, get into their stride, a slightly easier run of games of opponents, then things can change and look very positive very quickly.
I'm pretty sure if I go back last year and 2 years ago, you said exactly the same thing. Now we have a
probably every year.
And this never happens. This is a problem with Lazio, especially with.
Well, that's the test. Well, it's the European football thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the test. Yeah.
But I agree with you. Lazio had a very tough schedule starting the season. No other team had a schedule that difficult, at least not the top team. So that's comfortable. That's a good sign. But now comes the test. Lazio lost so many points last year after the Europa League competition. And this time, I think Sarri has more rotation. He's able to rotate more. So I think he has to do it. And he's not a manager willing to rotate a lot. But I think this year it's mandatory. This year, Lazio has to do it and see how we perform, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. Fingers crossed.
Yep. I think we got wrap it up here, Alistair. Thanks again for joining me. Don't know if we're going to do an episode after Feyenoord Lazio or maybe after the Lazio Verona all together, but we're going to be back. Remember to rate and review us on Spotify, Spreaker, iTunes, and subscribe to our channel on YouTube and Twitch. And if you want to support our channel, patreon.com/Lazio Lounge. Membership starts at $2 a month. And if you have questions for ticketing, season tickets for Lazio, well, you can write me on Twitter because it looks like I'm a help desk for Lazio tickets. So if I can help, I'm happy to do it. Take care.
Cheers.